Hello everyone, welcome to Tech Sharmit. In this session, we are going to discuss about another very important topic for Angular component lifecycle, that is sequencing. So far, we have discussed each and every function or the constructor as well to understand the concept of these Angular component lifecycle hooks, right? So we know how to use the function, what are the benefits of using it, but do we really know the exact sequence in which they are processed? No problem. In this session, we will be discussing that only, like how these functions are processed, what is the sequence, because while learning this function, we might have changed some sequence, like we discussed ngOnChanges later. Firstly, we discussed about the ngOnInit and ngDoCheck and all other functions, right? So that's why I have created this session where we will just summarize all the things that we have explored so far, and also we will see the sequence of it. Okay, but before we proceed further, I would like to recommend you to please go and check out the previously released sessions first, because they all are in proper sequence and sync. So if you follow them sequentially, then it would be much more easier for you to understand the ongoing topic, because for time being I'm just mainly focusing on how to use these functions. I'm just going to focus on the sequencing of these functions. Okay, so once a sequencing is clear, then I think you can easily make the other changes. Okay, so let's go one by one. So the first thing here I have mentioned, let's start with the definition from what is Angular component lifecycle. So you can see when we create the component, and after that till the component is destroyed, there are specific set of operations that are performed in the background, and those set of operation invoke different hooks as per the condition. So thus that entire journey of component from the beginning to the ending is called as Angular component lifecycle. Let me repeat the definition. Angular component lifecycle is a phase where component is created and destroyed, and in between whatever set of whatever events are happening are processed by some hooks, or you can say special method, and those methods are called Angular component lifecycle hook, and that entire journey of component from the beginning to end is called as Angular component lifecycle. Okay, so I think definition wise we are good. So now it's time to discuss about the constructor. Here you can see I have specially mentioned it that it is not a part of component lifecycle. Then why we are discussing it? Because it is somehow relatable to other ng hooks or Angular hooks. That's why we have kept this here, which is constructor. Okay, but remember one thing, whenever you are in an interview, always make sure that you are mentioning it clearly that no, constructor is not a part of Angular hook lifecycle. Okay, so what it is then? So this is the first thing that will be run once we create the component, and it is a standard JavaScript class constructor. What it is? It is standard JavaScript class constructor which runs when the Angular initiates the component. Okay, then after this, the first Angular lifecycle component which is called is ngOnChanges. Okay, so remember this thing. In interview you have to tell this thing that this is the first thing. Okay, so it runs every time components input have changed. Okay, so whenever the component input is changed, ngOnChanges is called. Okay, then we have ngOnInit. Now before moving further, I just want to tell you one thing. In these functions, among these functions, there are some functions that are repetitive. So that might show you you might feel that they are changing the sequence because they are repetitive. Like if we talk about ngDoCheck, so it is repetitive, but don't worry, actually they are processing in the similar sequence, and although whenever we are going to use it, we are going to use the specific one, but at least you should know the basic sequence, so that if someone asks you in the interview or exam, you can simply answer it. Okay, so we discuss ngOnChanges, which is performed when every time the component's input have changed. Then we have ngOnInit. Now this is the function that runs once after Angular has initialized all the components input. Yes, so this function has the capability to access the value that are stored in as a input value. Okay, so runs after Angular has initialized all the components input. Then we have ngDoCheck. Now what is ngDoCheck? It runs every time this component is checked for changes. Okay, so ngDoCheck is mainly used whenever the component is checked for the changes. Later on we have ngAfterContentInit, which runs after the component's content has been initialized. Remember one thing, whenever we are talking about the content, make sure that it is related to the projected content. Okay, so you can see here it runs once the component's content, which means projected content, has been initialized. Similarly, we have ngAfterContentChecked that runs every time this component content has been checked for the changes. So again we are talking about the changes that is related to the projected content, not to the normal content. Okay, then we have ngAfterViewInit that runs once after the components view has been initialized. Okay, so ngAfterViewInit is run once after the components view has been initialized. Later on we have ngAfterViewChecked, so this is the function which runs every time the components view has been checked for changes. So now you can learn it in a group. Okay, so these are the two things that is related to projected content. Again, after that we have 7th and 8th. This is related to the component that is related this is related to component own view. Okay, this one is projected content, this one is own view. So this is the difference between these two. Then we have later on we have two function which was introduced after Angular 17, after next render and after render. So both of these functions are mainly used for the rendering purpose. So here you can see the after next render function is run once the next time that all components have been rendered to the DOM. Okay, so once everything is rendered on the DOM, or after that it will be run, but only one time. Okay, this is not a repetitive function, it will be invoked only one time once everything is rendered on the screen. But similarly we have another function that is after render. So this after render function is mainly executed only one runs every time all components have been rendered to the DOM. So this one is the repetitive one. Sometime in an interview you might be asked with this question, like what is after next render and what is after render. So you can simply say that after next render is a function that is executed once everything is rendered on the screen, but only one time. This function is invoked only one time. Whereas if we talk about after render, so it runs every time for all the components have been rendered to the DOM. Okay, and then the last one is ngDestroy. So from its name it is clear that this function is mainly called or invoked whenever the component is destroyed. Okay, so it runs before the component is destroyed. So these are the all methods that are invoked after component is created till component is destroyed. Now here I want to tell you one trick with which you can learn the things easily. The first thing is, whenever you see init in a function name like ngOnInit, okay, ngAfterViewInit, right, ngAfterViewChecked, not viewChecked, only init. So init one, like wherever you will find the value init, you can simply say that this function is called only one time. Okay, so if init is mentioned, it will be called only one time. If init is not mentioned, it will be called multiple time. But another thing, there are some exception. You can see after render, so it is also repeated every time, right? But we are not using init. But mostly you will see that init, like ngAfterViewInit, runs once after the component view has been initialized. Okay, so like it's a kind of trick you can try, and like if you found something as exception or different, you can just put it in the comment section so that we can discuss it. Okay, but overall I would suggest you to try at least one function at a time and then practice it individually, because at a time if we try to learn everything, it might cause some confusion. Okay, so yeah, that's all for today. I hope this session is clear to all of you. From next session we will discuss few more things. So thank you for watching Tech Sharmit.